My son watched me fall and told his wife to keep walking. Not the fall itself, that was bad enough. But the way he said it, casual, like I was a lamp he'd knocked over and didn't feel. Like picking up. I was lying on my kitchen floor with blood running into my left eye, the room still tilting. And Darren looked down at me, then held the back door open for his wife. "You'll be fine," he said, "sleep it off." The door clicked shut, the garage rumbled. Their headlights swept across the ceiling above the sink, and then they were gone to their 8 o'clock dinner reservation. While I bled on the tile, I had laid myself 22 years ago. My name is Russell Coffey. I am 67 years old. I spent 31 years running an electrical contracting business out of Evansville, Indiana, started with a pickup truck, a tool belt, and $1,000 my father lent me, and sold it for $2.4 million 11 years ago. That money became my home, a small commercial strip mall on the east side of town, and 2 residential rental properties near the university. My wife passed 4 years ago from pancreatic cancer. After that, the house got very quiet, and I got very easy to manipulate, which is a combination that people like my son and his wife are designed to find. Darren was 34 when he asked to move in temporarily. He and Monica needed to save money, he said. He was trying to grow his craft brewery, Copperhead Brewing, a tap room he'd opened in one of my commercial spaces, and he just needed 18 months to stabilize his cash flow. Monica sat across from me at my own kitchen table and said she had always thought of this house as a second home. I believed her because I wanted to, and because grief will do things to a father that nothing else can. 6 months after they moved in, I was sleeping in the guest room. Monica had redecorated the main living area. Darren had added a second car to the driveway. They ate my groceries, hosted dinner parties for their friends, and treated me like a well-meaning inconvenience who was gracious enough to provide free parking. When I reminded my son about the tap room rent he hadn't paid in 4 months, he told me the brewery was having a rough quarter, and I needed to think long-term. I absorbed that. I kept absorbing things. The brochures for assisted living facilities started appearing on my nightstand sometime around month 8. Harmony Pines Care Community, Lakewood Senior Village. They never mentioned them out loud. They just appeared, and then at dinner Monica would ask me gentle questions about whether the stairs were getting difficult, whether I was seeing my doctor regularly, whether I was staying social. They were constructing a narrative. I just hadn't realized I was the subject of it yet. The night it all broke was a Tuesday in February, cold and dry, the kind of Indiana winter that makes the inside of your noses ache. I had driven out to one of my rental units to fix a slow drain. I still handled small maintenance myself, more to stay useful than because I had to. And I came back to find Darren standing in my kitchen with a manila envelope and an expression that meant he had rehearsed whatever he was about to say. 3 documents inside: a quick claim deed for the house, a second deed for the residential rentals, a third assigning controlling interest in my commercial strip mall, including the space where his tap room was located, where 3 other small businesses paid me rent every month. He wanted all 3 signed that night. I asked him what exactly he thought gave him the right. He didn't raise his voice. That was the thing that truly unsettled me. He had prepared for this and decided that calm was the better strategy. He told me I was getting older. He said the properties were too much for one person to manage. He used the word liability with respect to me, applied to my own body and mind in my own kitchen. He said this was the responsible thing, the loving thing. He said he and Monica would make sure I was comfortable. I told him I had built every single thing in that envelope from scratch. I told him I had managed those properties for 11 years, without a single missed filing, a single deferred repair, a single problem I couldn't handle. I told him his tap room sat on my land, and that my patience over the last 3 years was the only reason Copperhead Brewing still existed. That was when Monica stepped in. She came around the island and put both hands flat on my chest and shoved. She had her weight behind it. My right foot caught the leg of the bar stool as I went backward, and then the granite countertop edge found the spot just above my left eyebrow on the way down, and then the tile came up fast. The back of my head hit with a sound I felt more than heard. I didn't lose consciousness, but the room went sideways and stayed there, and blood started moving into my eye immediately, warm and certain. I looked up at the pendant light above the island. I heard Darren say her name once. The tone wasn't concerned for me. It was a warning to her about how this looked. Then I heard my own voice say his name, and it came out smaller than I expected. He looked down at me the way you look at a situation you've already decided isn't your responsibility. He said I would be fine. He said to sleep it off. He picked up the envelope from where it had landed near my feet, tucked it under his arm, and walked to the back door. Monica was already through it. "We have a reservation at 8, he said. To me, bleeding on my floor, "We'll talk tomorrow, when you're more reasonable." The door closed. The garage opened. The headlights moved across the ceiling and disappeared. I did not panic. I had been in a construction accident at 41. Scaffolding gave way, cracked rib, broken wrist. 6 weeks in a cast, and I remembered what I learned then, which was that pain is loudest at the very start, and if you breathe through it instead of fighting it, your brain finds what it needs. I breathed. The room leveled out slowly. The laceration was bleeding the way scalp wounds do, dramatically and not necessarily as badly as it appeared. What I was thinking about was not my head. I was thinking about what Darren did not know. Most people in my life knew me as a retired contractor with rental income and time on his hands. My son knew me as his father, which to him apparently meant someone who could be managed. Neither of them knew what I had done 2.5 years ago to keep his business alive, or under what name I had done it. Son had come to me crying at the same kitchen table when Copperhead Brewing was 6 months from closing. He was $190,000 behind on his SBA loan and overdue to every supplier he had. He had already borrowed against Monica's retirement account. He sat here and told me he was going to lose everything. I had not given him a check. I had watched that dynamic destroy men. A son who takes a direct bailout from his father never fully believes in what he built again, and he never quite forgives the person who saw him at his lowest. What I did instead was spend 2 days with my attorney Vincent Albright constructing a Delaware LLC called Heartland Capital Partners. Heartland then purchased a minority stake in Copperhead Brewing and guaranteed the restructured SBA loan. On paper, it looked like an outside investor had recognized potential and stepped in. I routed the money through intermediary accounts, so the trail was clean. Darren called me the week the deal closed to tell me an investor group had saved him. He was vibrating with relief and something that looked a lot like pride. He said it validated everything he believed about his business model. I told him I was glad. I congratulated him. I poured him a glass of whiskey from a bottle he had given me for Christmas. He never once suspected that investor was me. The guarantee agreement Vincent drafted contained a specific clause. If Darren or any principal of Copperhead Brewing was found to have engaged in financial fraud, assault, elder abuse, or criminal conduct of any kind, Heartland Capital Partners held the unilateral right to call the loan immediately, terminate the guarantee, and seize the collateral, the brewing equipment, the taproom lease, the Copperhead brand itself. Vincent had raised an eyebrow when I insisted on that language. I told him I hoped I was wrong to ask for it. I reached up to the underside of the island and found my phone in my jacket pocket. The movement cost me. My vision blurred, and the cut throbbed like something with a pulse. I got the phone, unlocked it, and called Vincent. He answered on the second ring. I told him I was on my kitchen floor with a head wound. I told him my son had just walked out. I told him to activate the Heartland clause immediately, transfer the strip mall and the residential properties into the Coffee Family Trust tonight, then call an ambulance to my address. He asked how bad the head was. I said bad enough to document well. He said he would handle it. I hung up, pressed my sleeve against my forehead, and waited. 11 minutes later, I heard the sirens. At the hospital, an officer came to take my statement. I told him I had slipped on wet tile and hit the counter on my way down. He glanced at the dry tile and the photograph the EMT had taken, and he glanced at the bruising on my shoulder that didn't match a solo fall. And he wrote down what I told him anyway. I could see he had more questions. I answered each one with the steady calm of a man who had slipped, not a man with a plant. 8 stitches above my left eye, mild concussion, observation overnight. Darren and Monica arrived at 7:30 the following morning. Monica pushed the door open first, wearing her concerned expression, the one where the eyebrows come together, and she tilts her head slightly. She sat on the edge of my bed and took my hand, and said she had been beside herself since she heard. I noted that the hospital's emergency contacts list had only one name on it, and it was not hers. I said nothing. Darren stood at the window in a gray pullover, looking like a man who had practiced looking worried during the drive over. He asked how I was feeling. I said I was grateful to be alive, and I watched something move behind his eyes when I said it. For minutes of warmth. Then Monica pulled the envelope from her bag. She said the accident had made clear what they had been saying for months. She said the properties were too much for one person. She said they were doing this out of love. All I needed to do was sign, and she and Darren would make sure everything was taken care of. I looked at my son. He was looking at the window. I took the envelope, opened it. The same 3 deeds. A 4th page now, medical power of attorney. Assigning authority to Darren. I signed every page, slowly, like a man who was tired and sore, and had finally accepted what the people around him were telling him. When I slid the packet back to Monica, she smiled at me. Genuinely, for the first time since they'd arrived. Darren turned from the window and said he was glad I'd come to my senses. They left 20 minutes later. Monica kissed my cheek. Darren squeezed my shoulder, the bruised one. When the door closed, I reached under my pillow and took out the burner phone. Vincent had couriered to the hospital at 6 that morning. I sent him one text, document signed, they're gone. He replied, all transfers completed. Trust recorded as of midnight, call when ready. Every property I owned had been moved into an irrevocable trust before dawn. I did not control the trust directly. Vincent's firm administered it, which meant Darren's new power of attorney was authority over nothing. The signatures I had given were legally void the moment he tried to file them, because there was nothing for me to convey. I had signed a folder full of expensive paper, with no legal weight at all. What I had given them was confidence, and confidence in people like them leads straight to carelessness. Darren went to the brewery that afternoon and told his staff they were going to be expanding. He mentioned a second location to his accountant. He started making calls to commercial real estate brokers to discuss what my strip mall might be worth on the open market. He did not check his loan portal until Thursday morning, when a wire transfer to his hop supplier bounced, and he logged in to find a balance of 0 and a red banner that read, account restricted, contact lender. Vincent had called the Heartland loan at 8 Wednesday morning. Copperhead Brewing owed $387,000 immediately. The guarantee was terminated. The brewing equipment, tanks, canning line, cold room, was under legal hold pending audit. The bank notification cited a specific contractual clause and referenced an active case number. The case number belonged to a mandatory elder abuse referral. The hospital had filed the night I was admitted, based on the injury pattern and mechanism of the wound. Vincent had quietly provided the detective on that referral with the audio file from my home security system, kitchen, hallway, and back entry, all recording, all time stamped. My original statement was under review. The police had not told Darren any of this. He spent Thursday making calls. The bank, his attorney, the SBA, a restructuring consultant. Everyone said the same thing. The clause was valid, the loan was due. Without the guarantee, the credit line was gone. Thursday evening, he called me. I let it ring 3 times. He did not apologize. He said something had happened with the brewery financing, and he needed help understanding it. He used the word help the way men like him use it, meaning fix this immediately for free. He said there was an entity called Heartland Capital Partners behaving aggressively, and he needed to know who was behind it. I told him I was familiar with Heartland Capital Partners. He asked how. I told him I was Heartland Capital Partners. The silence lasted 11 seconds. I counted. Then very quietly, Dad, I told him the clause he triggered was in Section 9 of the original guarantee agreement. I told him the home security system in my kitchen had recorded everything that happened on Tuesday night, and that recording had been provided to the detective handling the elder abuse referral. I told him the district attorney's office would be in contact. I told him I loved him. That was true. I told him that love had been the reason I spent 3 years quietly funding his dream. without taking credit for it. I told him that love had not been enough to make him a decent person, and I had accepted that, and I needed him to accept the consequences that followed from it. I ended the call. The following Monday, a detective with a warrant and 2 uniformed officers arrested Monica at the salon, where she had a standing appointment. She was in the middle of a blowout. Darren was taken at the brewery, shuttered by then. A bank notice taped to the front door glass. 3 of his staff members saw it happen. They called me afterwards separately to say they were sorry. They were good people. The business had been real, even if the man behind it had not been. At the preliminary hearing, Darren's public defender argued the financial relationship complicated the charges. The judge watched 42 seconds of the kitchen footage, denied Monica bail pending evaluation, and set Darren's at $150,000. He couldn't make it. He waited for trial from his mother's house in Newburgh, with an ankle monitor and a view of the street he grew up on. He pleaded guilty that spring. 3 years Indiana Department of Correction. Eligible for parole after 18 months. Monica took her chances at trial and lost. For years, the recording was not a sympathetic context for her. I did not attend either proceeding. Vincent went. He sent me updates by text. I spent those months recovering. My physical therapist, former Army medic, no patience for self-pity, worked with me 3 mornings a week, and by April I was walking 4 miles along the river trail without a cane. The scar above my left eye is thin and white now, a slight ridge when you run a finger over it. I stopped trying to hide it with the way I wore my hair. It is the only visible record of what happened, and I am not ashamed of what happened. The taproom space has a new tenant, a veteran of the Iraq War, who wanted to open a coffee and sandwich shop that hired other veterans. She signed a 5-year lease at a reduced rate. There is a line out the door on weekday mornings. I stop in twice a month and usually stay an hour, talking to whoever is at the counter. She keeps a corner table clear on Thursdays and tells her staff it is reserved for the landlord, which is a kindness I have not asked her to stop. The guest room at the end of the hall is still empty. I have thought about turning it into a study. I am not in a hurry. My son will be eligible for parole in several months. I have thought at length about what I will say. If he reaches out and I have arrived at nothing, that satisfies me. Some situations do not have a response on either side of the door that makes everything make sense. What I know is that he had a father who loved him enough to fund 3 years of his dream anonymously, and it was not enough to make him who I hoped he was. I do not know what would have been enough. I am 67 years old. I walk 4 miles on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I eat well. The rental income covers more than I need, and I have started giving the excess to a local veterans housing fund. A dollar amount I chose the same afternoon. I walked out of the courthouse and into the April sun. What I learned on my kitchen floor that February night, the thing I had spent a long time hoping I would not have to learn, is that loving someone is not the same as being safe with them. And a man who built something from nothing, one knows, in the particular way that only comes from experience, that if he has to, he can build again from whatever is left. It turned out I had more than enough left.